Welcome to WagerTalk NFL Podcast for Week 11. Scott Spreitzer here with Dave Cokin and Marco D'Angelo. No Matt Holt, no Jason Simbal this week, but Dave and I actually spoke to the guys on the Las Vegas Sports Line on ESPN Las Vegas a little bit earlier. So we got all the goods on NFL Week 11 as far as the betting handle is concerned. And then later in the show, Marco, Dave, and I will break down a handful of games. We're going to break down the Rams and Vikings, great game. Skins and Saints, Patriots, Raiders, and Mexico City. We'll finish up strong with the Eagles and the Cowboys in Sunday Night Football and, of course, best bets. But here's what we heard earlier today from Jason Simbal, the betting handle over at CGT Sportsbooks.
By the way, somebody tweeted me or texted me, and they messaged me on the NBA lottery and pointed out that the bottom three teams now have the same odds.
Well, they switched it, but I don't like it.
I don't care.
I like it a little bit better than I like the the way they just got it done with, but I still don't like it.
For me, it's real simple. If you don't make the playoffs, you are in the lottery, and everybody has the same chance.
Sure.
At that point, everybody has the same chance. Yep. It's luck of the draw, and that's the way it is. So now you've got teams tanking to finish in the bottom three, which is even worse than taking to finish as the bottom one, I suppose. All right, Jason Simbal's on with us right now. What's going on, Jason? How are you?
The thing is, it's still tanking, and that's the problem.
That's exactly
Absolutely.
Right. Exactly. That should never be something that you get rewarded for in any sport. And that, to me, is a real compromise of a sport's integrity.
And when you look at what the Sixers are doing here and what they might be in a couple of years, people are going to certainly have the incentive to still do it.
Listen, I know he didn't play much the other night, but the buzz is that the kid from Duke who got poked in the eye, Bagley,
yeah,
he might be the best guy out there this year, overall number one pick, according to some people. If he's as good as people say, and I'm not going to make the playoffs, the hell, I'm going to make sure I finish in the bottom three, so I've got a shot at this guy. It just doesn't make any sense. All right, let's talk some NFL, where there aren't any problems like that. Oh, well, maybe not. Okay. In any event, they've got their own issues, but they've got football games, and that's what we like to talk about, is the actual games themselves. So let's start off with tonight's matchup as the Tennessee Titans invade Pittsburgh for a matchup with the Steelers. And what's happening with the betting in this one, Jason?
Not much in terms of line movements on this one. The game's been 7 all week. That's, of course, Steelers -7 here at home on a Thursday night. So far the public is on the Steelers, not surprising, but not a huge public game. There are a few of those, which we'll get to, I'm sure. About 2.7 times more bets have come in on the Steelers. Like I said, not huge. Public definitely favoring the Steelers. Nothing really sharp about this game at all either. Just, pretty solid action on the Steelers -7.
By the way, the Cleveland Browns have been tanking for 15 years. Can't understand why they're not the Sixers.
Well, they always take the wrong guy.
All right, Jason Simbal. Sunday's Week 11 action. The Lions at the Bears. Detroit laying 3, total 41. Reports are saying the Lions could have 5 healthy offensive line starters for the first time this season when they take the field on Sunday. The Bears, they're not terrible. 4 of their 6 losses by 1 score.
Yeah, not only that, they seem to be a lot better at home. Trubisky at home, we saw they beat the Steelers at home. They had a good game against the Panthers as well. So the Bears at home are somewhat formidable. Lions -3 here, similar to the game I just talked about with the Titans and Steelers. No line move here, really. We did take one sharp bet on the Bears +3, nothing big. Big money on the Lions, though, from the public. 6 times as many tickets on the Lions. But like I kind of highlighted, there are a couple games coming up where the public is all over, even bigger than this one.
Scott, take the next game or two because I'm having problems with my schedule here. And
No problem.
I can't punch it up.
Chiefs at the Giants. Chiefs open 11.5. Jason down to 10.5. And I know New York is bad, but KC's defense is not good. They've dropped 3 of the last 4. The offense has dropped off a bit. 22 points per game the last 4 games. Came into the last 4, averaging about 30 points per game on offense, the Chiefs.
Yeah, this was one I can't really figure out because this game opened 11.5, Chiefs -11.5. It's down to 10.5, and we actually took 2 max bet from sharp players on the Giants. One at 11, one at 10.5. I mean, I don't know how you could bet the Giants after what you've seen, but if this team has any semblance of pride, they know they're a double-digit dog here, and they want to play big. But, you do have Andy Reid coming off the bye, and let's be honest, he knows the Giant organization pretty well, having spent all those years in Philly. So this game is weird to me because the sharp guys really are on the Giants, surprisingly. The one thing I will say, which is kind of funny, the 2 max bets we took on the Giants are the only bets we've taken so far on the Giants. So pros versus Joes for sure in this one.
Stuff. Bucks and the Dolphins. Can't wait to see this quarterback battle. Miami a 1-point favorite over Tampa Bay at CGT at last check. 2 very disappointing teams. No Jameis Winston. Mike Evans will be back, though, from suspension for Tampa Bay, and they've covered 5 in a row against Miami. Jason, when it goes bad for the Fins, it goes bad. They've covered just 5 of the last 26 after giving up more than 250 yards passing in their previous game. They don't normally bounce back well.
They don't normally bounce back well, and the Buccaneers, although their record doesn't indicate it, they've actually been somewhat okay with Fitzpatrick the last couple times he's played. The game here actually has been a pretty big move towards Tampa, kind of for all the reasons that we're just describing. Game open Miami -3. It's down to Miami -1. The biggest bet we took was a pretty sharp one, and it was on Tampa Bay +1.5.
Ravens at the Packers. Baltimore a 2-point favorite. Looks like Brett Hundley is going to play at last check for Green Bay, dealing with that hammy injury. But, boy, Baltimore dead last in the league in yards passing per game. Tough for me, Jason, to back the Ravens as road chalk, even though the number is small here.
Yeah, I mean, if the Ravens are going to win this game, it's going to have to be in the teens, you figure. They open -2.5. And the line is down to 1.5, so some Packers love early on. But the thing about this game is it's actually been Packers' money line. They took +120 and +115 with the Packers on the money line, which is why the spread has moved. So people thinking that the Packers can win this one outright, and like you said, Scott, I can certainly see that angle.
The Vikings are laying less than a field goal at home to the Rams. The Rams a perfect 4-0 on the road. Only weakness, Jason, that I can find when I'm watching the Rams right now, maybe their run defense, but, it hasn't hurt them yet, and this is going to be a very good test for this Rams offense. Where's the action on this one?
Absolutely. This is, one of the more intriguing games of the day, if not the most intriguing game of the day. And don't sleep on the Vikings. They've scored over 30 points, albeit one of them was to the Browns, 2 weeks in a row, both on the road. So the Vikings offense has been somewhat formidable here in the past few weeks. And the fun thing about this game, pretty much even ticket count and even money. The interesting thing that I noticed about this game is the biggest bets we took on the Vikings were actually after it was announced that Keenum was staying in. So I think the betting public actually does like Keenum here. And he's actually been pretty good this season, so that makes sense.
Yeah, I can't blame him for staying on board with Keenum. It would be tough with Teddy Bridgewater, maybe not down the road, but right now, just jumping in, basically stale and cold and rusty. Cardinals are at Houston. The Texans laying a point in a battle of backup quarterbacks and teams enduring disappointing seasons. Blaine Gabbert behind center for Arizona with the knee injury to Drew Stanton.
Would you rather watch Bucs-Dolphins or Cardinals-Texans? That's kind of the predicament I'm having here.
Nice
I think I'd rather watch Bucs-Dolphins personally than this game. Started Houston as a 1.5-point dog, and now they're a 1-point favorite. So it's been all sharp action on this game back in Houston. I really don't figure the public to weigh in on this game at all. So it'll be us against the sharp guys with this one. We're going to be needing Arizona.
Okay, well, Browns defender Danny Shelton says they're going to go out and dominate on Sunday. Jags are a 7.5-point road favorite in Cleveland this week, total down to 37.5, but Jags probably shaking in their shoes right now after hearing Danny Shelton's comments. Not sure, by the way, if he was talking about football. Jason, Cleveland 7-28, their last 35 against the spread.
If the Browns do dominate defensively, they still could lose by 2 touchdowns because the Jaguars D will probably score. This number's 7.5, and it's been 7.5 the whole way. Public all over Jacksonville here, not surprising. 4 times as many bets on the Jags. Funny thing about this game, no sharp guys have really weighed in big on Cleveland here. They did, as we talked about and we joked about the last few weeks. They've been all over Cleveland. They're finally done with it seems. Jags -7.5.
Wow. Watch what'll happen. The Browns will cover this game, and they'll get right back on that Express next week. Here's one of the most interesting games on the board this week. The Redskins are tough. They hang in against everybody. They've got a tough assignment this weekend. They're down in New Orleans facing a red-hot Saints team that's got 7 in a row.
Red-hot Saints team, and red-hot because of their running game and their D. Who would have thought you'd say that before the season begun? But they certainly are. Not a ton of action on this game, believe it or not. This game, actually, Saints 7.5. They're up to -8, so certainly more action on the Saints. I don't think there's really much here yet. I do think that this will end up being one of the big teaser games. Teasing the Saints down to 1 or 1.5 or whatever they, 6.5 point tease, whatever the people want to do. So I do certainly think that we're going to be Redskins fans come Sunday.
Jason, the Chargers laying 4 at the soccer stadium in Carson this week, total around 43.5. And Tyrod Taylor, he's been benched after last week's horrible performance. But I tell you, it wasn't just Tyrod Taylor who played poorly. Check out the game tape on that one. It's just that Taylor isn't Sean McDermott's guy. Nathan Peterman is. That's who Sean McDermott drafted.
You know, he's walking at the end of the year.
Yeah, he is.
He's gone.
No, you're absolutely right.
We're getting to that point in the season now where teams that don't think they're really going to make a serious run, and what the Bills have done is nice to some extent, but they're not a great team.
McDermott has to test Peterman.
They have to take a look at Peterman, see if he might be the quarterback for next year, whether they're going to have to go shopping or drafting for one. These people who are reading more into this,
including Taylor.
Yeah, I think they're wrong.
I think the Bills, you have to, whether the move works or not, at least the Bills have a realistic idea of where their team is. Yes, they're in the thick of the playoff race. Yes, they're 5-4, but they really are in a rebuilding stage. And just because they have a winning record and can make the playoffs, we saw the Dolphins made the playoffs last year too and won 10 games. But Giants last year too and won 11 games. A lot of times when you make the playoffs, it doesn't mean you're heading in the right direction. It just means that you got a lot of lucky breaks, won a lot of close games. So I definitely commend the Bills for at least trying it to see what they have in the future. The Rivers situation is interesting too because I believe he's in concussion protocol, and I'm pretty confident he's going to start, but it's not 100% at this point. That's why the number's 4. We still have this kind of as a circled game with low limits because of the Rivers question.
What do you think this game meant? And that leads me into what I was just going to ask. I was going to bring up the Rivers thing. Where does this go if Rivers is upgraded to probable, which I expect him to be between now and Sunday? Does it go to 6?
Yeah, I was thinking 4.5, and then we'll wait and see what they do with it. But if Rivers is announced out, I think this line's probably south of 3.
Yeah, I think it jumps. I think you'll get play against Buffalo money with the rookie starter, or the untested starter, I should say, on the road. And I was that's just my feel is that this number would go up gradually, get maybe to 5.5 or 6 on Sunday if Rivers is playing.
Yeah, and the Chargers defense actually quietly has had a pretty good season. They're top 10 in points per game allowed, and they're right up there with yards per game as well. I think they're in the top 20 in that too. So the Chargers D is tough. Plus, as we know, Bosa and Ingram is not going to be fun for a first-time starter.
All right, Bengals and Broncos. Last year this would have been a pretty big football game. It doesn't mean much now.
Yeah, this has been an interesting one because, believe it or not, after what we've seen, people have actually bet on Denver. Surprisingly, more action on the Broncos, but pretty quiet game. This is one of these, kind of similar to the game I talked about before between the Cardinals and the Texans. Really hard to figure what to make of this game. Two teams that are below where we figured them to be this season, and no sharps weighing in on this game really at all. And I don't really figure this to be a big bet game by the public either.
You opened New England 5.5. They're playing Oakland and Mexico City. That number's up to 7. The total has gone up from 51 up to 54, Jason. This
is, as I kind of highlighted before, one of the bigger games the public has been on all season. You mentioned Pats going from 5.5 to 7. That was not sharp action that drove that move. That was all the public. Ticket count 6x on New England. Money is 4x on New England. This is shaping up to be the biggest decision of the day. Everybody all over New England, any possible way they can be.
How high does the line end up going?
I would be more inclined to go to 7 minus. If we're at. Figure you can go to 7 minus 20, 7 minus 25. I think right now we're at 7 even with the Pats because trying to avoid coming off the 7 if possible. But depends on what happens. If a lot of books are facing some big parlay liabilities because some of the chalky favorites have gotten there in the 10 a.m. slot, you might see this one go up to 7.5.
I'm guessing the teaser count on this game will be enormous.
Yeah, we're going to need to beat one of these. Yeah. Like I said, we're going to need to beat the Jags, the Saints, or the Patriots, or else that teaser number is going to be really ugly come Sunday night.
All right, and speaking of Sunday night, it's Philadelphia and Dallas. And the way the Eagles are going, you can't say you're surprised with this, especially with Dallas off their worst game of the season. And no Ezekiel Elliott, the Eagles are the favorite on the road.
But when I was monitoring the Patriots-Raiders action, I figured that was going to be the biggest public game of the day. But it's actually this Eagles-Cowboys game. 13 times more tickets on Philadelphia. And I checked this math twice, what I'm about to tell you is accurate. 80 times more money on Philly. 80. And the biggest bet we've taken was only $5,000. It's not like there's one of these big 5- or 6-figure bets that's driving that. This is so much money on the Eagles here. People love Philly. We saw what Dallas did last week. Zeke is out. We know that Sean Lee might not play. We know that the left tackle Tyron Smith might not play. And because of that, all public on the Eagles. So, it could be an ugly day for the books if both the Patriots and the Eagles get there.
All right, let's take a look at an NBA marquee matchup tonight. I don't think I've ever seen this before. A team that's won 13 games in a row And they are a substantial home underdog, and the line keeps going up.
Yeah, the Celtics are plus 7.5 at home against the Warriors, and it's it seems like if the Warriors want to turn it on, they will. We actually will be needing Golden State, so it'll be nice to need the Warriors, a couple times a year. This is one of those. Everybody betting the Celtics, including Celtics money line, which is at about plus 260. So certainly the public thinks the Celtics have a chance in this game. Let's see them hang with this team before I believe it.
Top-level NBA teams are those considered that outscore their opponents by like 4 points or more per game on average. The Warriors will outscore their opponents by 12 points per game. If they want to win, as Jason said, they can name the score even against the red-hot Boston Celtics. One quick thought about a big game in college basketball, and I hope you got this in front of you, and I'm not throwing you a curveball here, but Xavier at Wisconsin. I wanted to ask you what the betting handle was in that particular game. I was a little surprised that Wisconsin was bet up to 3.5, and at that point it became tempting for me to take Xavier. Now, I haven't done that yet, but they opened 1. I thought that was a good number, but I think, Xavier, boy, this team's going to challenge in the Big East. I think Wisconsin, you never want to doubt Wisconsin, but the bottom line is right now they look like middle of the pack Big Ten.
Yeah, Wisconsin is the type of team that, you always figure maybe they're not as good this year, and then by the end of the season, they kind of get their stuff together, that system kicks in, and they do quite well. So if you're going to get them, to be picked off, this would be the case. Xavier, they haven't played anybody, but they've destroyed every team that they've played so far this year. Majority of the action is on Wisconsin, as you mentioned. Numbers at 3.5. Interesting to note about this game is the biggest decision on this game for us, at least so far, is we need the over. People bet under 146. It's down to 145. Just for 1 second to mention in the college, the biggest game, the most lopsided action is Appalachian State, Iowa State. Iowa State coming off a couple bad losses. They were at 1 point, 11.5 point favorite. That one's down to 10, plus a lot of App State money line at 4-1.
I'm guessing a lot of those people have not seen Appalachian State play basketball.
Yeah, and Iowa State played Missouri. That's not chump change to open the season. I mean, we had Mizzou in that game.
The second game wasn't good against Milwaukee.
No, it wasn't.
But, and we'll just mention this, that game, that specific game, Milwaukee and Iowa State, fit the angle that you talked about last week prior to the start of the college basketball season, Scott, with the returning starter angle. Milwaukee was the side in that, so maybe it wasn't such a big surprise.
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, App State has won a couple games this year, but the teams that they've played, I've never even heard of the colleges, no offense to them, but I just don't know. These are not any games that we would put lines on, but people are certainly trying to fade Iowa State early here.
All right, great stuff. Now, as lines move, you can't always be in the sports book to monitor these yourself, and why would you want to be unless you're there to enjoy yourself and in some great surroundings? Nothing wrong with going to the book, that's for sure, but as far as the betting purposes are concerned, there's a lot easier way to go about it, and it's just the way any serious player plays now.
Yeah, when I walk into the M Resort out there every Sunday morning at about 7:38 a.m., I see a line of people outside, and I just always wonder, they could have been betting from their couch. And you look at the Raiders-Patriots game, you could have had New England at 5.5 if you had an app and you just checked that earlier in the week. So certainly makes sense to do that, especially this time of year, holiday season. Don't annoy your family to go wait in line at the sportsbook on Thanksgiving. Get your app, and you could just bet from the comfort of your couch and your sweatpants.
Although you might be doing your family a break if you actually leave the house.
That's a good point. You can say that you're going to make a bet, but meanwhile you just took a drive in the car because you have the app. There you go.
Yeah, you can drive down to your local gentleman's club instead. What the heck? Why not?
Go to the book.
Yeah.
No, we know where to find you on Thanksgiving Day now.
Yeah, there you go. I wish. Follow Jason Simbal on Twitter at JSimbal. Good betting information, opinions, other good stuff from Jason on Twitter. Thank you, sir, and we will talk to you. Oh, actually, we won't. I don't know. We might talk to you next Wednesday. I'm not sure. We'll have to wait and see. If not, happy Thanksgiving, buddy.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. If I don't talk to you, enjoy the holiday.
Every Tuesday, WagerTalk.com offers a best bet selection from its hottest handicapper. It's a great way to introduce yourself to WagerTalk.com with a big best bet winner for just $2 on $2 Tuesday.
Welcome back to the WagerTalk NFL podcast for Week 11. We're going to break down a handful of games now. We're going to start with a good one, the Rams and the Vikings. Minnesota laying less than a field goal. It's about 2.5 at home to LA in this one. The Rams a perfect 4-0 on the road, Marco. Only weakness, and I've been trying to find them with these Rams, only weakness I can find is maybe against the run. But, man, I'm kind of splitting hairs and getting a little nitpicky there when I start talking about this team having a true weakness. Your thoughts, the Rams and the Vikings?
Yeah, the Rams, last week they had a close game first half against Houston, and then Houston imploded in the second half with those 4 turnovers, and the Rams did what a good team's supposed to do, put an inferior team away whenever they had the opportunity. Now they're going to be going against a team in Minnesota that can play defense. And I know if you look at last week's game, they gave up 30 points in Washington, but the game was one of those type of games. It just, a track meet broke out. I still love this Minnesota defense, and I think because of the Rams' high-scoring game the last couple weeks, because of the outburst last week by Minnesota, the 38-30 game, I think where the value actually is in this game is in the total. When I saw this total of 46, I'm like, why is this total this high? I mean, This is one of the best defenses in the league in Minnesota, and the Rams' success has come. They set it up with the running game, and then, it makes the play action work, everything work for Goff. Now this is going to be a game where we're really going to see Jared Goff and find out what kind of quarterback he is, because the running game is not going to have an easy go of it. He's going to have to make some plays throwing the football. And on the flip side, the Rams defense has been playing good as well. I looked at the total. The straight play, I leaned to Minnesota, but I think the better play here is to go under the 46. I see this as almost a playoff type game, because it does have playoff implications as far as home field advantage goes, because right now these are the two teams vying for the number 2 seed, and if Philadelphia, has a misstep somewhere, we could be talking one of these teams is the one that emerges as, the number 1 seed in the NFC.
That would be something I would look at, too. By the way, I have not been to the new stadium in Minnesota, but I've been told, and this is from people who get around the league pretty well, you better start talking about this stadium in terms of noise and atmosphere in the same breath as you talk about Seattle and a couple others. It is a really difficult atmosphere for road teams. The fans are just tremendously into it there. And we know Minnesota's always had great fans, but it's just the way this building's configured, and the fact that it's full all the time now because the Vikings are exciting and fun to watch and winning games. This is going to be a stadium where I think you're going to start to see visiting offenses, have some trouble in terms of figuring out what the hell is going on with all the noise that's there. It's a smart thing. I hope they do it here in Las Vegas and factor that into the new stadium, because you want to make it as much of a home field advantage as possible. Well, this could contribute to games going the same way as we've seen in Seattle over the years, where the under becomes the favorite in a sense, because the offenses on the other teams have to keep things basic, because they just can't hear what's going on, and they get penalized a lot. That sounds like a kind of a complex train of thought. Maybe it sounds that way, but it actually, if the reports are accurate, and it certainly seems that way.
The announcers on the
games
game say it's that. I mean, those are the guys that I listen to, and they're saying that. So.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to go along with that. I think it's going to contribute to unders when you have high numbers like this, and certainly the number seems high here. You're right. Everything you said about the Vikings game last week, it really shouldn't have played out that way. It didn't matter to me because I wasn't involved in the game at all. But if you'd have told me beforehand that's going to be a 38-30 game or whatever the final score was, it's like, really? Just doesn't figure. I think you're getting a point or two of value because of that score this week. I would also look at the under.
Well, before this year, all we heard about was running backs weren't that big of a deal in the NFL. They might want to look at Todd Gurley and Zeke Elliott if they want to make those statements again. Todd Gurley is a beast, guys. And, we talk about McVay being a quarterback whisperer. Well, it's a good thing he's got Todd Gurley running the football for him, because, boy, does he open up a lot of things with his running game. And the offensive line gets their credit, too, for opening up some of those holes.
He's only made one big mistake all year, and that, of course, was in a game where I had the Rams. And he
at the pylon?
Yeah, he cost the Rams the football game, and he cost me a win. But the guy's having a great season. Yep.
Skins and Saints in New Orleans, and the red-hot New Orleans Saints are laying 8 at home to the Skins, total 51.5 at last check. And, Dave, I thought the Saints were in a bad spot last week. They didn't get the memo. Neither did Buffalo. I'm so impressed with this team's run-pass ratio. And last week, I know the game was a blowout, but this is what they've been doing. Last week, they had 48 carries, 25 passes. Drew Brees is going to be an All-Pro for a couple more years, even though he's getting older, if he's got a 2-to-1 run-pass ratio and they're winning football games.
It's amazing. He would be, excuse me, he'd be the marquee guy in terms of how is a quarterback this old doing this well, except that Brady's in the league. So he kind of, he only gets supporting actor status, so to speak. But Brees he's incredible. He still makes great throws. Nobody reads defenses any better than he does. And, of course, the improvement on the Saints, probably more than anything, the fact that Rob Ryan isn't there anymore. We joked about it's not a joke. There's a lot of things we'll say to try and be funny. This isn't. He was terrible at the job. Okay? He just wasn't good. He's fine where he is now on TV. The Saints are way better without him, and it's just amazing how they balance this offense. The defense isn't on the field. This part has nothing to do with Rob Ryan. The defense isn't on the field all the time because the offense isn't
running the football,
going down the field at breakneck speed and sending the tired defense back out there to get rolled over on. So this is the way you play football to me. I've never been a fan of fast break, except as a gimmick offense that you throw out there once in a while. And that's how the Patriots, for instance, do it. They'll use it sometimes, but not all the time.
The greatest show on turf had Marshall Faulk.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Even that high-powered, almost arena-like offense had Marshall Faulk to depend on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and at that time, nobody else was running the stuff anyway, so it was way ahead of the curve. But it became a gimmick. The Saints have gotten away from it. The tough part here is this Washington team, boy, do they compete every week. They don't give up. They pull out a win in remarkable fashion a couple weeks ago at Seattle. That was a great win for that team. And last week, I mean, it looked to me like the Vikings were a lot better football team last week. And you look up at the end of the game, and Washington's still in there. I mean, they lost, but they were respectable. They're not going to be a pushover, but I'm not going to try and get in front of an express right now. The Saints have just monster momentum right now with the 7 straight wins. I don't want to get in the way of that. Saints are nobody for me.
We're just at the point now, Marco, where if you want to lay points with the Saints, well, it ain't that easy anymore because they're definitely being treated like a team that's won 7 games in a row with the point spread where it is.
Yeah, I was with you last week, Scott. I thought the spot was perfect for Buffalo. Fortunately, I used 2 plays in the game, and I used the over. I got an over that I didn't deserve because it only got over simply because the Saints were trying to run out the clock, and Buffalo gave up, couldn't stop the run, and they just kept rolling down the field, and we got the over late. But in watching that game, you got to learn from your mistakes. And what I learned is, and I questioned this defense. I wasn't sold on this defense because they hadn't played a lot of potent offenses.
Sure.
But in watching the game, Dave hit the nail on the head. And the difference in this defense this year is because they are running the football as much as they're winning time of possession. Mm-hmm. And when you win time of possession, I don't care how bad your defense is, it's going to make the defense better than it is. We saw that last year.
The suck factor is minimalized.
Oh, absolutely. We saw it with the Dallas Cowboys last year. Because of the way they were able to run Zeke Elliott, It kept that defense off the field, and they put up better numbers. That was a bad defense, but they were able to hide it. Teams are able to hide it, and that's what I like about this one. And I think, again, just like we said in the Minnesota Rams game, because Washington had that 38-30 game last week with Minnesota and the Saints put up 47 points, people are going to look and say, oh, okay, this is still the Saints. We're in the Superdome, perfect conditions. Let's go over the total. Mm-hmm. This is only the second game that has had a total over 50 for the Redskins this year. And if you look at the Redskins the last 2 weeks, 4 weeks ago, they had all those injuries on the offensive line. They got banged up in that Philadelphia game, and then they had to go to Seattle and play with, no offensive linemen, all that stuff. Well, now the last 2 weeks, look at their runs. They went from 15 and 18 carries in the Philadelphia-Dallas game to then in the Seattle and Minnesota, they went 23 and 27. They're getting more carries now because they're getting people back and they can run the football. If Washington can have balance on offense, they're going to stay on the field longer too. I think both teams are going to be methodical in this game. I'm going to go ahead, take the under in this one as well. I think this total was way too high. I've got this game coming out, somewhere 45 points or less. I'll go under 51. It's just too high for me.
Well, if you like the under this next game, it's gone up 3 points. Talking about the Pats and the Raiders from Mexico City. New England went from a 5.5-point opening number all the way up to 7. And as you heard a little bit earlier in the show, Jason Simbal talking about one-sided action from both the public and the sharps on the New England Patriots. But that total, Marco, also went up. It was a 51. It's now up to 54. We do know that New England, being maybe the next smartest team next to the Cleveland Browns, they basically stayed at elevation this week. They played in Denver. They stayed at Air Force Academy, Colorado Springs, practice there. It is a little bit higher climb into Mexico City, but the bottom line is they have a better chance of being acclimated than if they went back home and then flew to Mexico City for this one. How do you see this one? Again, the Patriots, 7-point favorite, total 54.
Well, I'm going to use a disclaimer on this one, guys. This game looks and smells exactly like the setup of the Buffalo Bills last week. We got a team that's in what looks like a horrible spot, New England, having to play back-to-back games on the road. Yeah, they stayed out west and, for the altitude and everything, and is smart. But at the end of the day, they're still playing back-to-back road games. You've got Oakland coming off their bye week. You had a team go into the bye that's had a dismal season, although they did win their last game. Of lackluster win over a Miami Dolphin team, 27-24, although Miami got the late touchdown to make it a 3-point game. It's still Miami was getting blown out by everybody. So winning that game, even if it was a 10-point game, not that impressive. They had to use that extra week. We've always said teams that go into the bye week, generally, if they go into the bye week on a high, we worry about it being a momentum stopper. If they weren't playing well, that bye week is a blessing, and they usually come out with a great effort. So that's what you have with Oakland. So old school me says I got to take Oakland plus the points. But I can tell you this year in the NFL, the haves and the have-nots have just been destroying everybody. And we're going to talk about that when we get to another game on our card later, the same type of situation. But for me, it's Oakland or pass. I'll probably pass, but I got to take Oakland or pass.
Oh, I guarantee you I'm passing. I talked about this on the WagerTalk videos that we did this week. And I'll sum it up very quickly. I have 2 rules in the NFL. 1, do not ever bet on Cleveland. 2, don't bet against Belichick. And I broke one of the rules last Sunday. And 24 free special teams points later, I got my ass kicked by taking the Denver Broncos against the Patriots. And you can sit there and say, well, you got unlucky with, who scores 24 points on special teams. Well, the Patriots do. That's who, okay? So back to that rule again. Don't break your own rule. Don't bet against Bill Belichick. My numbers here not favor, but in terms of winning the game, I have Patriots winning the game. But at 7, my numbers say Oakland is the value. I am not possibly betting the game. There's 0%. I don't care if they make, I don't care if they make the number. If they say, hey, you know what? We're going to give you 27. Mm-hmm. I still wouldn't bet the game. I am not betting against this team.
I might take 27.
Well, okay. I probably would at 27, but you get the point. Yep. There's just got to be better options than betting against the New England Patriots because they find a way to take the money out of your pocket when you bet against them. I'm not doing it. So my number in the game is I don't have it in front of me, but I think it was 5.5 was my number.
Which is where the opening number was.
Yeah, it was right about where the opening number was, and I think that's a good number. So slight value to the Oakland Raiders and a 0% chance that I play it.
Okay, story time with Uncle Scott for just a second. And we're going to weave this into a question for you guys when I'm done with the story time about a New England game that's coming up down the road. I don't remember, Dave, if you knew him. I knew him through Seed Williams, but the late I.M. Johnson. Do you know?
Oh, sure,
okay.
Sure.
I.M. Johnson, 6'5", 350-pound white guy.
I'm trying to remember what his real name was. I can't remember his real name.
Oh, yeah, but he went by Isaiah Moses Johnson, his 3 favorite basketball players. Best NBA handicapper, better, bar
fantastic.
None. Before I met him, anybody before I met him, you don't match him. Anybody since I met him, you don't match him. I don't match him. Nobody matched him in the NBA.
No, he knew that league better than anybody I've ever.
Freaking believable. Anyway, late 80s, I meet him through Seed Williams. And Seed Williams, by the way, for those who are listening to this podcast and don't know, he's been a fixture in Las Vegas sports radio for 30 years. And he works with Lotus Broadcasting, ESPN, NBC, all that whole shebang. So anyway, I was doing a show earlier on Thursday, and he said to me, he goes, "This is an I Am Johnson special. Not this particular game, but coming up next." And Seat does the voice. I Am had that gravelly voice. First, the story. I Am's a big dude. Marco didn't know him. Marco, you got out here after he had passed away, and he was not that old of a guy. It had to be late 40s, I'm guessing.
He was a large individual who enjoyed life.
And he loved to party.
Yes.
And so anyway, we're at the Thomas and Mack, and it's a UNLV basketball game, and I'm going to say this is around 1990, 91. Seat Williams, his girlfriend, and they're still together, Carol, me, and we're walking on the concourse. And here comes this after the game, and all of a sudden we hear this, "Hey, baby, what you doing, honey? You need a guy like me." And we're turning around. It's I Am Johnson. Well, Seat was off to the side or something. He went to the restroom, whatever. I'm kind of about maybe 5-6 feet away from Carol, so he doesn't really see me. No, he's met Carol a million times, but he's had a few. And Carol's looking around. She's giggling, because she knows he doesn't realize who he's talking to, right? She's giggling, and she turns around and she goes, she's like, "Hey, honey, hey, sweetie," this kind of thing. He's like, "Yeah, that's right, sweetie. I'll show you, sweet." And anyway, he's doing the whole shebang. So she finally goes, "I am. It's me." And he goes, "That's right, baby. I know it's you. That's why I'm talking to you." And he goes, "No, it's me. It's Carol, Seat's girlfriend." "Oh, yeah, I knew that." But anyway, so, and you got to imagine, this is a guy who on radio, I'll never forget. Seat and I are doing a sports radio show, 88, 89, 90, around there. BYU's playing Georgetown. BYU's laying like 5. And I Am Johnson, who was the greatest NBA capper of all time, was pretty good at college basketball. So Marco, he said there, Seat goes, "All right, I Am." He goes, "What do you think about BYU 5 over Georgetown?" Seaton, he used to call him Seaton Williams, Scott Spreitzer. "I'm going to tell you right now, ain't no way 5 white guys are beating 5 black guys by more than 5 points." And he says it on the air. Anyway, now back to the point. An hour later, he always used to say things like this. And I'm glad Seat reminded me of this today, but I got to ask if you want to play it. Patriots are going to be on or at a higher elevation now, playing this week, last week, basically 2 weeks they've spent at the higher elevation. Right. After this game, they go home. That's what I Am used to say. When you see a team playing at a higher level, he used to talk about like college with Wyoming in the mix, Colorado State, play at a higher level for 2 weeks in a row. When you go home and you're on the eastern or western seaboard, that's when you want to play against them. Here's the question. I agree with that. I Am was usually right.
It actually makes sense.
They're hosting the Miami Dolphins. That's the team that you're going to be betting on. Now, you're going to get a few points here. It could be 12, 13, 14 points when this game kicks off.
And the Dolphins will treat it like a Super Bowl.
They will. So do you bet? And again, I kind of like the fact that we'll be on our own if we do it, as far as the public is concerned. But Miami plus the points would be an I Am Johnson special.
Maybe I'll tease him. No, I'm serious. I mean, at least that way I'll get like 3 touchdowns.
3 touchdowns, absolutely. I just had to point that out. Plus, I wanted to talk about I Am Johnson.
That's a great story.
Oh, it was great. We had so much fun with that guy.
And it's no exaggeration. This guy, I mean, he was phenomenal in the NBA.
I've never met. He had articles written about him. Linda Collins used to write articles about him. The late Linda Collins.
It was just amazing.
And this was before social media. This was.
He just knew the league and the personnel. Better than anybody I've ever seen.
Never seen anything like it. I can remember betting his plays and watching him go on, and I'm not kidding. I'm not exaggerating. Like 38-8 runs in the NBA.
I was just going to say, I remember ridiculous. He had a 36-6 run.
Right.
And I know because I couldn't give out his games. Obviously, that would have been just breaking the rules. Yep. But I bet every one of those games, and believe me, he probably paid for a new car. Okay. I mean, it was phenomenal. Unfortunately, the bad news is, and he just was an incredibly. I don't think he ever slept.
Oh, no doubt.
I mean,
he'd go to Hawaii on a night off. I mean, it was going to be back the next day.
He liked the cocktails
and the girls
and the powder.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, he did,
and heart gave out, man.
Yeah, his heart gave out, but he was a legend.
Hell of a fun guy, and a great guy to be around. But boy, and I used to be able to do marathons back then. This guy was
I couldn't keep up with him.
Marathon plus. Anyway. All right, guys, final game we're going to talk about before we get to best bets, the Eagles and the Cowboys Sunday Night Football. Eagles now up to as high as 4.5. We know Zeke has gone until late December. I think Christmas Eve he comes back. Dave, you look like you wanted to say something.
Well, yeah. I mean, we just talked about the Pats-Raiders game and the action that was getting. Right. And as Jason mentioned, this is going to be one of their biggest liability games of the entire season.
Yes.
With just an inordinate percentage of the money and the tickets on Philadelphia.
Absolutely, and with that being a Sunday night, they're going to get ticket after ticket written during the day. Eagles laying as much as 4.5 at last check, and we know Zeke is gone until late December. We know they didn't look good against Atlanta. What scares me as much as Zeke, or even maybe more than Zeke, guys, Dave, will start with you, is that Sean Lee is doubtful with that injury. And I'll give you an example of how important he is. They give up, Dallas, 160 yards rushing per game when Sean Lee isn't on the field. They give up 80 yards rushing per game when Sean Lee is playing, when he starts and plays. He cuts their rushing yardage allowed in half, and he's probably not going to be playing in this one.
Nah, he's a phenomenal player. And, sometimes teams can camouflage a guy being down for a little while. I think Houston, for a little bit, was able to do what they needed to do in terms of compensating for J.J. Watt being out. But it started to catch up with him after a while. It caught up with Dallas last week immediately. When Sean Lee's out of the game, they're not very good.
Right.
And Philadelphia's offense is a monster right now. I also wonder, and this is just one of those things, you can't really cement it in terms of saying, well, it's worth this many points or worth that many points. But I think the whole Jerry Jones thing is a real distraction of the team right now. And I can't say how much. And it might not even be the case. I mean, I might be exaggerating that. It might be something in my own mind, but I don't think it is. Mm-hmm. So here's a situation where you're going to have I can't. It's not even a pros versus Joes, because the Joes are all over the Eagles, but it's not like the pros want the other side. So it's a dangerous situation to me to want to lay a number that I know is probably a little bit high. But I think that's the only way it can go here. I mean, the Eagles have just huge momentum right now. And this Peterson is starting to establish himself as one of the coaches in the National Football League. He doesn't have any – the team's not taking any weeks off. All right? They're out there playing at warp speed every week. They're exciting to watch. I think the Cowboys right now could be going in the other direction. And I don't know that Garrett fires them up. Kind of looks right now, and I'm not chiseling this in stone, but I think it's Eagles or nobody for me.
Zach Ertz has been upgraded to probable.
Yep.
That's helpful for Carson Wentz.
And he tweeted that today as well.
I didn't see it.
He had some kind of a tweet where he's excited about this weekend's game, so he's playing.
Carson Wentz, the one thing that bothers me, and I've talked about this on the videos with Dave and Ralph on Wednesday, Marco, is that he's been hit 63 times this year, Carson Wentz. He was hit 42 times last year at this time. He's actually taking more hits right now this year than he did last year. And he doesn't look to avoid hits. He's like Big Ben when Big Ben was in his youth. And so it's a situation where that gets a little bit scary, but you can't handicap that a quarterback isn't going to play an entire game because he's taking hits. That would be obviously stupid, right? So it's a situation where, you're going to have to go through this guy taking a couple of shots now and then, but he seems to always bounce back up, and they're winning football games, obviously.
Yeah, for sure. And this is the game that I alluded to when we were talking about the New England-Oakland. Old School's going to have you on Dallas plus the points as the home underdog. NFC, East division rivalry, Sunday night football, the whole 9 yards.
But the people aren't betting the Dallas Cowboys.
No. They're not.
They're New School, I guess, bettors today.
Well, the public's looking at what they're seeing, and what they saw
last week
is last week that Dallas was a train wreck without Zeke Elliott. How are they going to score any points? Blah, blah, blah. Well, I think part of it, and let's be realistic, we've had this soap opera with Zeke Elliott all football season. But every week, come Sunday, he was on the field. 2 weeks ago, we thought that was the week it was happening. And then he got, almost like the pardon from the governor, stay of execution. So if you're preparing for last week's game during the week, they had to think, in their mind, we're preparing with and without.
But there's a good shot he's going to play.
But there's good because why would you think anything else?
Yep.
That's got to be a distraction.
Sure.
For the Cowboys. Their game plan was, okay, well, Zeke's going to be there. We set it up and everything else. Well, it didn't work out that way. Now it's done. He's out. I think they dropped the appeal. Let's just get this over with. The team knows what they got to do. It's going to be 6 weeks without Zeke. So now you've got a whole week to change your game plan. Do a game plan that's going to protect Dak. Last week, yes, you had the injury to the left tackle, so you had a guy that just got beat like a rented mule the whole game. So you're going to change your blocking schemes. Mm-hmm. You're going to line up a tight end, on the outside next to him to help him in blocking schemes so that they can, chip block and do things to prepare not to get rolled over if they don't have the all-pro left tackle there. So I think we're seeing a line that's getting inflated because of what people saw in the last game. And then let's not forget, Philadelphia's coming off their bye week. I know it's a division game. I know it's Sunday night, so I'm not saying they're going to be flat, but they had all that momentum.
I was just going to say, sometimes they're momentum killers.
They are. I don't like teams coming out of the bye that was just rolling going in. We saw last week with the Steelers go to Indianapolis. They come out of their bye week. You had the combination of that and the fact that Mike Tomlin, the entire time that he's been at Pittsburgh, when he's on the road against a losing team, the team plays down to the level of the competition. But they were coming off the bye week. I think, for me, this is one of those ones, again, just like the Oakland game, I've got to look at the home dog or I pass. Well, probably a pass.
Good stuff from both guys, Dave and Marco. And when we come back, we're going to get best bets from those guys. And I'm going to tell you, because that game that we just talked about is my best bet for this week on the show, whether I'm new school, whether I'm old school, whether I think Marco's full of crap, or whether or not I think he's full of wisdom and genius. It's all coming up next. Stick around. We are Wager Talk.
It's Manic Monday, and that means every pick at WagerTalk.com is just $9. Get a play in any sport valued at up to $30 for just $9 each and every Monday at WagerTalk.com.
Welcome back to Wager Talk NFL version. Don't forget to check out the college football podcast also at WagerTalk.com. Also, plenty of videos. All the guys shooting videos this week. Those are up, college football and the NFL. Best bet time. We start first with Dave Cokin. Follow him on Twitter at Dave Cokin. His work's at WagerTalk.com. What's the best bet this week, Mr. C?
Yeah, pretty good NFL season going, and we'll have some good plays up this weekend at Wager Talk. I haven't decided on them yet. Probably won't put them up until Saturday. This is one where you don't have to play early. We'll be getting some good plays up there on the weekend. Best bet from the ones we talked about on the show, that Rams-Vikings game under looks decent to me. I think you're going to have a really electrified atmosphere at Minnesota this weekend. And while both teams are coming off games where they scored a lot of points, and the Rams certainly do have a very capable offense, I think you get a little more defense in this game. I'm not saying it's going to be a real pitcher's duel. It's not going to be 20-17 or something like that. But I think there's enough here to keep it under the total.
Good stuff. Marco D'Angelo, your best bet. By the way, follow Marco at Marco in Vegas, your best bet.
I'm going to go. We've had a card of ugliness this week. There's a lot of college and NFL games that are ugly. So I'm going to keep with that trend, and I'm going to go to one of the uglier games on the card in the NFL on Sunday, and that's Arizona at Houston. I'm going to take.
Ooh, that's ugly.
I'm going to take the Texans here, and this is a spot. I'm looking at it, and I know Tom Savage has looked horrible so far. 2 weeks ago, I gave him the wash because he came in late in the week. The injury to Deshaun Watson happened late. You only had a day and a half of practice and game planning. Then last week, they were good for the first half, and then everything just fell apart in the second half, and it turned into a rout. So now we're getting line value, I think, because nobody wants any part of Houston. But really, we're talking about Arizona on the road. We're looking at a team that is switching quarterbacks. They're going to Blaine Gabbert. Guys, Blaine Gabbert, last 23 starts in the NFL, 4-19 straight up.
Yikes.
On the road in a pick-the-winner situation, I'm going to take Houston. I'm going Houston here, and that's where I'm looking at for my best bet. I'm going to take the Houston Texans.
Hey, man, it might be ugly on paper, but when they cash, they're as pretty as the most beautiful girl at the dance, and Marco's going to take that ugly game and turn it into a winner on Sunday. All right, I mentioned earlier before the break that I was going to tell you whether I thought Marco was full of crap I said that, or whether he was full of wisdom. I never think he's full of crap, so I must think he's full of wisdom. I like a lot of what he said about the Eagles and Cowboys this week. The difference is, in our analysis, is that I'm going to add one thing to it, and then I'm going to tell you that I'm going to take the Cowboys plus the 4.5, now that it's got up to 4.5 from being as low as 3. Listen, look at the teams Philly has beaten during this winning streak, and I know you can only beat who's in front of you, but that winning streak includes games against the New York Giants, the LA Chargers, those Arizona Cardinals, the Washington Redskins, the 49ers, and the Broncos. They are 8-1 straight up. 7 of their wins have come against teams with losing records who aren't going to be in the postseason in all likelihood. They are 1-1 against teams with a winning record, with the win coming against Carolina. Give me that 4.5. It went up over 3. I'll take the 4.5 with Dallas. I might be the guy that is holding his nose at the window when he's making that bet on the Dallas Cowboys, but there's a potential ugly underdog there this week with their injuries that I think is going to cash, be a pretty nice winner by the end of the day. That's what I'm hoping for on Sunday night.
Well, if you're behind me in line on Sunday when I'm making the bet on Houston and you smell something, it was either my bet or I had Mexican for lunch.
God. So you are full of crap. But anyway, all right, guys, good stuff this week. And again, don't forget to check out the College Football Podcast at WagerTalk.com. It's also free. All the videos, plenty of deals going on this week from all the guys at WagerTalk.com. For Dave Cokin, for Marco D'Angelo, for Jason Simbal, and for Mark Seidel at the controls, I'm Scott Spreitzer. You know what to do. Put them in the win column. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Have a great Thanksgiving.
And I bid you good night. Good night. Good night.
I'll catch you on the flip side.